people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
News! Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that unbeaten up-and-comer from Australia, Sky Nicholson, is still contemplating a return to the amateurs. She was quoted as saying, "I've got a decision to make. If I go the Olympic route, a world title shot will go on the back burner for now." It just so happens that when Sky Nicholson was last in action opposite the ring Tania Alvarez, then unbeaten Tania Alvarez of Spain, a vacant WBC silver title was on the line. We all know Sky won the fight.
But it's the funniest thing, that same WBC silver title at featherweight that she won in the Tania Alvarez fight, it's currently vacant, and it's up for grabs in the upcoming Mahfoud versus Ochman fight.
It looks like Sky Nicholson already vacated it. Looks like she chucked the belt soon after winning it, which lends credence to the notion that she may in fact end up going back to the amateurs, because if she wasn't, she wouldn't have threw that title in the air.
That WBC silver title that has since gone vacant would have been a step in the direction of this division's undisputed champion, Amanda Serrano, a fighter, a champion, who Sky not that long ago said she wanted to fight.
Give up that title, you may be giving up your position in order to get in line for a fight with Amanda.
Professional boxers returning to the amateur ranks is met with mixed reviews in some circles.
To some, it's viewed as unethical. A fighter with professional experience looking to gain a competitive edge in the amateur ranks.
The last couple of years, we've seen one or two professional boxers decide to go from pro to amateur, essentially moving backwards. Fighters like Delphine Passoon and Christina Hammer, Estelle Mosley.
Unbeaten up-and-comer from France, Estelle Mosley. She's planning a similar move to Sky Nicholson. Not that long ago, we saw her countrywoman, Maiva Hamadouche, try her hand in the amateurs for amateur gold. Needless to say, it didn't work out. My thoughts, I don't necessarily view such a move as being unethical, because professional experience doesn't necessarily equate to amateur success. It's not a guarantee.
If it did, Christina Hammer and Delphine Passoon would have medaled. Maiva Hamadouche as well, but they didn't.
The point of contention is that a fighter with professional experience may have a competitive edge going into the amateurs, but time and time again, when we've seen professional boxers go to the amateurs, they don't come back with medals.
So do they really have a competitive edge?
Is it unethical? I've often heard it said that the amateur ranks and the pro ranks, they're different beasts, almost different sports entirely, in that an amateur boxer who had a lot of amateur success can transition easier into the pros than the other way around.
I've heard that.
It's the difference between fast-paced 3-rounders in the amateurs versus long, drug-out 12-rounders in the pros. That not every great pro makes a great amateur. Quite the opposite. If you're one of these fighters that need 2-3 rounds to get something going in the amateurs, you ain't got that option.
All you got is 3 rounds.
Really isn't that much time to feel each other out. More conventional route for a fighter is to go from the amateurs to the pros, to take all that amateur experience and transition over. And
even blue chip prospects and standout amateurs have to make adjustments going into the pros.
They do have to tweak things a bit, try to develop a more pro style than what they were using in the amateurs. Sky Nicholson
can't say that she's fully developed a pro style yet. There's more work needs doing.
Now she's talking about going back to the amateurs. Well, I don't think it's unethical like some others, but I do think it's a bit of a waste of time.
It's a waste of time if you don't medal.
She's got time because she's young. She's about 27 years old. She can try her hand at the amateurs one more time, and if things don't work out, she can resume her professional boxing career. She has enough time to do that.
If she wants to, she does.
But I did enjoy that Matchroom had a prized stallion in that featherweight scene, that featherweight show, a densely populated, talent-rich division.
So long as a major promotional outfit has a fighter at a given weight, that's a weight they're going to pour money into, because they got to get their fighter fights.
Almost all the major outfits have a stake in the featherweight division. Almost all of them. You heard that right. Frank Warren's got Raven Chapman, his unbeaten up-and-comer, his featherweight. Sky Sports,
they've got Kara Sardingstall.
Kel and Nisei Sarland have Sophie Alish. That's their prized stallion in today's featherweight division. In Matchroom, they've got Sky.
For my part, I liked seeing that all these major outfits have their own prized stallions, their own stake in the featherweight division, because that would help to get it more exposure, more coverage than it's ever gotten in the past.
Lest we forget the face of this division, the illustrious Amanda Serrano, 7 division, current reigning, undisputed champion. The featherweight division never had coverage like this before.
But it does now. That's a good thing for everybody.
Yeah, I don't actually want Sky to go back to the amateurs. I want her to stick around. I want her to continue to develop. I want her to carve out her own lane in the sport.
I'd prefer that she stay.
But if she has her heart set on Olympic gold, what the hell am I supposed to do about it?
What can anybody do?
In men's welterweight news, a rather lengthy statement, a lengthy read from none other than Benn himself, who stated, "The WBC have declared me innocent of being a drug cheat. I am grateful for the ultimate finding. It was the right decision, and it was the one I was willing to accept. The easy option would have been to accept a 6-month ban, save myself a huge legal bill, and simply move on. But my reputation and my family name is worth more to me than that. My only frustration is the manner in which I've been cleared has seemed to create further questions and add further fuel to the baseless negative speculation. As such, having now had a chance to digest, I want to set out my position in full and explain in simplest terms possible why I am innocent. As you will have gathered from my posts and comments over the past few months, I have always been extremely confident that I would be cleared. This is because of all the evidence and information that came to light during our investigation into how this happened proves what I already knew, that I am innocent. However, because of the ongoing legal proceedings, I have been repeatedly advised not to say anything. Keeping silent when I have this evidence in my possession and listening to ignorant, uninformed commentary was one of the hardest parts of this process. Even following the WBC statement, I could have just said,
My team will stay silent no longer, and I have to let facts be known.
So here's what I can say. In my defense, to the WBC and a 270-page report provided to them, at no point did I indicate that I failed any VADA test because of contaminated eggs. As part of its lengthy investigation, the WBC instructed its own experts to review my supplements and diet, and they concluded that egg contamination was most likely the cause. Those experts have seen this issue arise in elite athletes across other sports, and I have no reason to question their analysis when it concludes I am not a cheat.
Right.
However, I feel like the WBC statement did a disservice to my defense, which was based upon a comprehensive scientific review of the testing procedures, which set out a number of reasons why we believe the results were completely unreliable, and proved beyond any reasonable doubt that I am innocent. The report prepared by my science and legal team contained extensive analysis of both tests and concluded that there was clear evidence of fundamental flaws and irregularities. By way of just one example, my sample appears to have come back clear the first 3 times it was tested. Without explanation, it was retested again after 9 days.
Whoa.
And only then did it show a trace positive.
Whoa.
It should have only been tested once. These critical findings were endorsed by an independent expert scientist who provides accreditation to laboratories, and his opinion was that many issues were so troubling and so serious that the lab could lose its accreditation. My team will be referring to the issues to the relevant accrediting body so it can make its own determination. For what it's worth, and contrary to the media speculation at the time, I requested the B samples be tested at the earliest opportunity. Because of the importance of trying to get to the bottom of what happened, I arranged for a scientist to fly across the world to attend the testing procedure in person, as you're allowed to do so under the rules. And unbelievably, she was not even allowed to be in the room when the test results came through. How's that for transparency? I have been advised that's a major breach of an athlete's rights, and had it been necessary to go to court,
Go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport on this case to prove my innocence.
that alone would have meant the test results were dismissed. Let me be absolutely clear, though. My defense is not a technical defense to exploit a loophole. I am convinced the substance was never in my system, and I certainly never knowingly ingested it. I am told it's something that supposedly stays in the body for months, and yet, barely a week after failing a VADA test, I passed the UCAD test. I have never previously failed any kind of anti-doping test and passed multiple tests with both UCAD and VADA in close proximity to the 2 tests that returned adverse findings. This adds further proof to my belief that the findings were testing errors. Even if it was actually in my system, it was at such a low level that it could have never had an effect and could never have been consumed with the intention of having an effect. That is why Eubank was willing to go ahead with the fight, having taken his own medical advice. As we supplied all of the relevant information to them, them, known at the time, and indeed the board, back in early October of 2022. For now, I have to focus on rebuilding my career, as this has cost me a great deal of time and money. But at some point, I want to make a stand on behalf of athletes who may find themselves in a similarly devastating position to me, but without the expertise of the resources
Or the resources.
to clear their name. Everything I have learned during this process from talking to many experts gives me serious concerns about the whole testing system in the sport. Anti-doping protections are obviously extremely important, but so is ensuring people are given due process and presumed innocent until proven guilty. Cheaters should be caught and punished, but people like me who prove their innocence should be vindicated and allowed to continue their career. For those who gave me their unwavering support, I will forever be grateful. For those who said they would wait for a verdict before deciding I was guilty, I appreciate your patience. As for the BBBOC, they attacked me publicly and privately during the most difficult time of my life, treating me with utter contempt and without any consideration for fair process or my mental state. I am aware that many people will not even bother to read this statement in full and continue to make their snap judgments without thinking. There is nothing I can do to change that, but I take comfort in what I know is true and have proven with evidence. I am innocent. I wouldn't wish for my worst enemy to experience what me and my family have gone through, but next time I step into the ring, I will be mentally tougher than I ever was before.
So what do we know?
In a 270-page document submitted to the WBC, at no did Benn indicate that contaminated eggs caused the failed VADA test.
The WBC concluded that.
The report by Benn's science and legal team concluded there was clear irregularities and flaws with testing procedures.
The first sample came back clear 3 times. Only when it was retested 9 days later, the test showed a trace positive result.
It's only supposed to be tested once. Why'd they test it 4 times?
The last time, 9 days after the 3rd time.
For your information, tests should only be tested once, and the lab could lose its accreditation for such misconduct.
They're only supposed to run that test once. Why'd they run it 4 times?
Benn requested his B sample be tested at the earliest opportunity. Fighters are legally allowed an independent scientist present when B samples are tested. Benn's scientist was not allowed in the room.
The substance that he tested positive for is supposed to stay in your system for months. Benn passed his UCAT test barely a week after failing the VADA test. There's an inconsistency there that needs to be addressed.
How does he test positive with one anti-doping agency, but not the other when the tests were happening within proximity of each other? Make it make sense.
Oh, we'll try to in another video.
And finally, in men's super lightweight news, per a tweet from Michael Benson, confirmation. It has been announced Alberto Puello will defend his WBA super lightweight world title versus Romero on May 13th. Carlos Adames will defend his WBC interim middleweight belt versus Julian Williams on June 24th.
Rolly doesn't deserve a title shot.
The WBA shouldn't be sanctioning this fight. I understand it's a voluntary title defense, not a mandatory title defense. Alberto doesn't have to fight the guy per se, but irrespective of what Alberto is willing to do, the WBA should not be willing to sanction this fight.
It's a joke.
The guy's coming off a knockout loss to Gervonta Davis last year, and he's done absolutely nothing as a super lightweight to warrant a world title shot, a world title opportunity. He hasn't even rebounded off that loss. There are a bunch of guys in the WBA's ranked standings that deserve a shot a lot more than Romero does.
What the hell are you paying these people sanctioning fees for?
If you're Venezuela's own Ismael Barroso, a little-known fighter, you have to ask yourself, what are you giving these people your money for just for Romero to get a shot instead of you?
How do you?
Doesn't make any goddamn sense.
It doesn't.
As they say, the WBA is going to WBA. There's no standards over there, no quality control, nothing semblant of mitigation and regulations.
It feels like there should be a rule.
If there isn't one, and there clearly isn't, you can't defend your title, voluntarily or otherwise, against the guy who's coming off a knockout loss at a lower weight.
God forbid he actually wins that belt from Alberto Puello.
Broly's not a good boxer. He's not a good fighter. You gotta understand that. He's achieved some sort of cult following due to his sound bites more than his pugilism, more than his boxing.
Yeah, some people know him, and some people like him, but that does have less to do with what he does inside the ring, more to do with what he says outside of the ring.
Doesn't deserve a title shot, and the idea that he's getting one, voluntarily or otherwise, well, it's not a good look for the sport. I don't really think it is, and Alberto Puello, he better cross all the T's and dot all the I's when he shares the ring with this kid, because if they can rob him, if they can award Romero a decision, they will.
Rob Peter to pay Paul?
They have. That's what they did to Jackson Marinez when he shared the ring with Romero. Anybody that saw that fight knows. Jackson Marinez deserved the nod. He deserved the decision, but because he's not as popular as Rolly,
You know how it works.
Alberto Puello, he's another guy who's not as popular as Rolly.
You know how it works.
You know what it is. Alberto Puello better create clear separation between himself and Rolandio Romero. He better, if he wants to hang on to that WBA title, should Rolly win. I hardly think that Rolly's going to go in there with the likes of a Subriel Matias, who's also over there on the PBC side of things. He's not going to look to unify titles with that guy.
Not unless he wants to go to the hospital.
If by some chance he wins the WBA title from Alberto. If he doesn't, and he loses, I expect that Alberto will unify titles with Subriel Matias. I expect that he will.
But he would, sooner than Rolly, I think.
They also made mention of Carlos Adamez's next fight. I'm actually surprised, pleasantly surprised, that they've gotten that guy a fight and they haven't shelved him, that he's going to see action at some point in the near future. Opposite the ring, former unified junior middleweight champion from Philadelphia, Julian Williams.
That's supposed to go down in June.
Coincidentally, Jermall Charlo, that division's full WBC champion, he's supposed to be returning that same month. You wonder that the both of those guys, Carlos Adamez and Jermall Charlo, won't be fighting on the same card.
It's just a few weeks ago that Jermall Charlo himself indicated by way of his social media that he would be coming back and he would be returning to middleweight in defense of his title in June.
Not what I expected. I half expected Jermall Charlo to simply vacate his WBC title and move up to super middleweight. PBC's got a lot of fighters, a lot of ponies in that super middleweight show. That's what I half expected.
He's been given too much leniency as it is by the WBC. He hasn't seen action since the summer of 2021, the night of the fight.
In June. If he does in fact come back in June, it will have been approximately 2 years' time since his last fight. Why didn't WBC simply label him a champion in recess?
Why is it that when Carlos Adamez petitioned the WBC last year to order the mandatory fight between him and Jermall, they didn't do that?
They didn't order it. I don't mind Adamez versus Williams as a fight, but by all rights, it really should be Adamez versus Charlo.
And if what you're telling me is that Charlo's been out of action too long and he shouldn't be fighting a guy like Carlos, then maybe he shouldn't be holding that title.
Not if he can't fight a guy like Carlos Adamez, the WBC's interim champion, straight away.
For 2 years. The night of it will have been 2 years the WBC title hasn't been defended, been in limbo.
It's not right, that's all I'm saying. So Carlos is fighting Julian. Julian last saw action late last year in November, opposite the ring Mancia. He won a unanimous decision. It's the only fight he had the whole of last year, but he has seen action in the last 12 months.
And neither guy was all that active last year. Carlos only fought once, and so did Julian.
But I still think the bookies and the odds makers will have Carlos Adamez the considerable favorite over Julian Williams, and perhaps if he makes it through that guy, he can finally get that fight with Jermall Charlo.
Which isn't a bad fight.
Even if it is long overdue.